Hi, thanks so much for you all being here. My name's Chiemi Karasawa, and I'm a documentary director and producer member of AMPUS, and I'm pleased to introduce the subjects of Sue Kim's brilliant documentary, Speed Cubers. Thank you guys so much for being here. Um, let's just jump into it. So, in watching first of all, it's a beautiful, heartbreaking, amazing film and a journey, whether it's a documentary or a piece of narrative. I don't think anybody has encountered two more poignant characters, and the hero's journey that they go on together is something that you could only craft if you're lucky in fiction. So the fact that you stumbled upon the story and it unraveled in this most amazing way, can you talk a little bit about the film and the story and the characters, Sue, and how you came into this?
Yeah. So as these guys know, I'm a cubing parent. So my son is a speed cuber, and that's how I initially stumbled on this amazing, magical little universe. So at the onset, I knew I wanted to make a documentary about speed cubing. And I think at first it was maybe going to be a little bit more of an overview of the world of speed cubing, a little bit about like the rules and the different puzzles and all the like intricate details about it. But it was at the 2018 US Nationals that I was there with my son. And I'd already kind of started development on the documentary. That's when I first saw Max and Felix like in person. And we don't get to see like Felix. We don't get to see much because he's all the way in Australia. So that was the first time I saw them together, and it just was so apparent that they had this really unique rivalry where they were like the two best. Everyone was kind of gunning for both of them. They're very like equally respected, and huge amount of world records. But they also had this lovely friendship. It was like a burgeoning friendship at that time. And they cared for each other, and they clapped and rooted for each other when the other person was competing. And you just don't see that every day. So when I saw that physically with my own eyes, and I was getting very emotional in the audience, just watching them compete in such a gracious, lovely way. That's when the documentary for me became, oh no, this has to be about Max and Felix. This is the story, because it's so unique, and it's so like heartwarming and life affirming. Just watching from the audience, like I felt just encouraged about like humanity. Oh, there's
Absolutely.
two rivals that are so kind to each other. How is this happening? And so then I basically reached out to Schwan and Miki and Felix at separate times, and kind of just got the conversation rolling about how would you feel about being filmed? How would you feel about being the subject of a documentary? And then that's kind of where it went from there.
And then Schwan and Miki, amazing parents, um, of this extraordinary young man. What was it like for you to be approached by a filmmaker asking if Max would be a subject in a documentary film? What was that like for you? What was your initial response?
Um, we were kind of, w- we always thought that we wanted to share Max's story when he started doing really well with cubing. Because I remember when Mickey and I were going through the autism journey earlier in our lives, anytime that we heard stories that were like really inspiring about somebody with autism just doing something amazing, like for instance, one time we read an article about a man who had autism swim the English Channel, and we just found things like that so uplifting and so motivating and so necessary, to have just cling on to pieces of hope in our life, that we thought that if we should ever be in that kind of situation, I think we should do the same, and share that story. And that was the primary reason. But at the same time, just being very mindful of being careful that this doesn't invade Max's life and his own story and his life and moving forward with his development. But Sue did such an incredible job with just being respectful of our privacy when we needed it, but at the same time being honest and showing who Max really was.
What was Max's response Sue, did you ask Max directly? Did you approach Miki and Schwan first? What was Max's response to all this?
Max, you tell.
Well, Max,
Didn't.
I don't think Max really understood too much. He understood that sometimes cameras take your picture and things like that. But honestly, the big motivating factor was Feliks was going to do it. And so that was the thing that, I mean.
And also Chris was a friend, the cameraman.
Chris Olsen, our DP.
Oh, right. Well, I could let Sue speak more about that, but and that was the other component. We had a cameraman who followed us that was from the cubing community that really helped to make the process simple for Max, because then all of a sudden he was surrounded with people that he was very familiar with.
Yes, and as you know, access is everything. As a filmmaker, if you don't have the subject's trust and access, you're not going to have the story. Let me turn it over to Feliks now. So at what point were you approached in this whole journey, and what was your response to being part of a documentary film?
So I think it was kind of late 2018 that Sue reached out to me, and I'm not sure if it was via Schwan and Miki or she'd talked to them first, but I kind of became aware of the idea, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna pitch this to Netflix," and I was like, "Okay, that seems like a bit of a long shot," but then with a bit more background information and knowing who Sue was, and I guess I know her son as well, and with Schwan and Miki on board, I was like, "Yeah, I'm more than happy to be involved," and it was kind of like, I wasn't really expecting it to lead to anything, or I was like, oh, there's a small chance it'll get picked up by Netflix or something like that, but obviously I have no idea. And Sue's the queen, so a few months later she kind of came back and was like, yeah, Netflix want to do it, and then it was like, oh, okay, this is actually real. I gotta I've got to get myself filmed and that sort of thing. But I suppose I've been doing cubing for, I guess, a very long time, and I guess bits and pieces along the way have been documented, and there's all sorts of solving videos and record videos and interviews and nice kind of YouTube compilations that people put up, but never anything that was more of a storytelling perspective or anything that went anywhere mainstream whatsoever. It was all kind of within the cubing community. So I guess it was pretty cool and pretty exciting to, I guess, have the opportunity or the exposure that they were going to make something about speed cubing for a mass audience. So that was all pretty exciting. And yeah, obviously sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. At this point, did Max and you already have a relationship? How close were you guys, and how comfortable were you together, regardless of the cameras being there or not?
Yes, at that point, we'd probably been to at least 3 or 4 competitions together.
Okay.
I would have met him the first time maybe a year and a half before that, and we did we did a trip through the west coast of the US to a bunch of competitions, and I was staying at Schwan and Miki's place and that sort of thing. So I'd spent a fair bit of time with Max and in competition settings, and we went to China once, where obviously we were just hanging out with each other most of the time because we were the only people that spoke English, and so yeah, definitely had spent a decent amount of time with Max for sure.
One of the most amazing things about the film is watching your relationship between Max unfold and blossom in this way that not only, I'm sure was wonderful for Sue to be able to document and sort of pace out in this narrative way, but just watching your personalities bloom together and how you seem to draw out more of each other. I'm just wondering, watching the film, Feliks, did you feel like you learned anything about yourself or your relationship to Max that you would not have explored in any other way or been exposed to in any other way?
I just suppose hearing various comments from Schwan and Miki and seeing the footage around just kind of how much I impact Max and help him was, I guess, kind of eye-opening. I think I'm pretty low-key and tend not to think about too much all the time, and so for me over the years it was just, I would just go to competitions, hang out, he's great at beating my records, happy for him, whatever. But yeah, to see the impact and how much I can kind of help him here and there is pretty nice. But that was kind of the main thing.
So Felix, did the emotional aspect of the film, or did your emotional response to some of the interview questions surprise you? The emotion of it when you saw him in the movie?
Do you mean like, was I surprised when I was emotional, like during the interviews, or by what, like rewatching the documentary?
Well, I don't know. Tell me what your emotional response was watching the documentary, first of all.
Sure. I mean, so watching the documentary, yeah, I mean, I knew how everything kind of panned out and kind of experienced all of that, but obviously with a bit of miraculous editing and some nice music and all that magic, it really hit me pretty hard. And so pretty sure, like, I've probably watched it like 5 or 6 times, I think, since we got the first copy and in the start, like before it got released, and then with people and family and friends and that sort of thing. Yeah, it definitely hits you pretty hard. And I mean, for the competition, like the competition itself, I was not really emotional until kind of the day after everything was over. I think just the combination of like exhaustion and I don't know, relief and maybe a bit of sadness that everyone's leaving and that it didn't do well. That's all that combination of things. Yeah, I definitely is pretty emotionally triggering. It's a very draining experience, I reckon.
And what about you, Miki and Schwan? Were you surprised at all by the emotions that the film elicits, or that the journey you go on, the emotional journey that the film goes on?
I think that we were surprised by the way people took it. I mean, I think we're so close to our own story that we don't see it as much. So when the movie came out and everybody was commenting on how much it affected them, and what the emotions were, and frankly what they found funny or interesting, we were just really surprised by a lot of that. I think that we were just, our story is so close to us, we don't really see anything. And Miki and I, we're always a little bit surprised that people are always saying that, oh, you guys did such a wonderful job and did this and this. And to us, we're just doing what we don't like, we don't like, think like they say they call us heroes and stuff like that. We're like, your kid is burning in a building, you run in there and get them. You're not a hero, you just do it. It's just what every parent would do. So I think that we found ourselves in a situation that kind of looked that way, but it was really nice to hear the nice things that people said to us.
I think one of the things you guys are all robbed from in this era of pandemic right now is that I have to remind myself that you didn't sit in an audience at a festival screening, with hundreds of people laughing and crying through the film like I did with my husband, or, I'm sure many other people did on their own. We just sat alone, watched this movie, and had this incredible emotional response to it. Sue, what is your hope for audiences to take away from a film like this? You've traversed the entire story. You've shot, I'm sure, much more than is actually on the screen. What were you expecting of the film that you initially were trying to tell, and what do you hope people take away from it?
That's funny that you asked that, because I remember that Schwan asked me that exact question when we were talking about whether or not they would participate in the film, and a very earnest question of like, what do you hope people walk away from after watching this film? And I said at the time, I hope they see Feliks and Max and are inspired to just do better, be better. And I know that's a very sort of cliche phrase, but it does say so much when you can see 2 young people who are put in positions that are very antagonistic towards each other just because they're in a competition and they're both at the same level and there's championships involved and records. And to see them both being gracious, loving, human beings that are reaching towards connectivity, I just think that seeing more models of this kind of way of being a human, the more we have out in the universe, in the media, or on any kind of platform where people can see, I think it just does better things for humanity. It teaches us to like take a pause before we're about to get in a Twitter war with someone, or like reach out to a person that you wouldn't normally think that you'd have much in common with. And just, you know, like be better humans. I feel like that's the main message.
There is such a beautiful display of friendship in this film, of love in this film between these two young gentlemen. And I just have to say that, you know, and maybe I'm just coming from an American perspective, but I don't feel like we get to see that often coming from two male characters or two male subjects. People willing to be so vulnerable with each other that they will reach out and extend a hand in friendship, whether they're competitors or not, support each other, whether they're winning and losing. And you see that the winning and the fantastic winning or the crushing losing becomes so much more deep and complex when it's filled with that kind of compassion and love for each other. Feliks, is this always the way it goes for you when you have a competitor that you're engaged with?
I think definitely for people who are kind of, you know, world class at the top level, doing these major competitions and traveling, and there's so much on the line, and they've worked so hard for something and practiced for so long. Like, there's definitely a lot of empathy among the top competitors because everyone has experienced what it's like to fail. Everyone has experienced what it's like to succeed, and everyone completely understands all the emotions that people go through. And that's, yeah, I guess one of the things that definitely bonds the people who are, competing at for you know, the world championships and world records, because it's not, I think it's any sort of sport or competitive thing. It's not always, you can't always win. And sometimes it's very rare that you win. And just being able to deal with that and understand that between people is, that's something definitely common. I did like the point about a positive documentary. I think the two Netflix specials that I watched before this were the Tiger King and the Jeffrey Epstein Netflix special. So it was a nice contrast.
Yeah, it's a very different exploration of masculinity to either one of those two films. But I just wanted to be specific and say, what do you think how is your relationship different with Max than it would be any other competitor?
With Max, with Max, it's a bit different because on the one, like everyone else that has, you know, that I've been competing with over the years, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if I practice, if I work, I know I have the edge of this person. I know I can beat him. With Max, it's like he's just so focused and intense and competitive, like on the next level to anyone else. And so in the back of my mind, it's like, well, I just got to try my best here and kind of accept what happens. But I guess also his autism kind of plays a role in that, you know, the kinds of conversations and interactions and everything are always a bit different. And I mean, he's completely obsessed with the cube and all the records and all your times and everything like that. So it's always a different type of conversation and interaction with Max, but he's pretty hilarious as well.
And Miki and Schwan, what do you think? Do you think Max has changed at all through his friendship with Feliks in these circumstances?
I think, first of all, one thing I want to clarify, anytime you hear Feliks talk, he is really, really self-restrained and gracious. I can tell you right now, Feliks is, the best way to sum it up is he is subconsciously always focused on being a good human first before anything else. And to give you an example, at one time, I remember Feliks mentioning, and I can't remember exactly where, but he said that he would give up one of his championship for one of his good friends to win one. And so that's the kind of person Feliks is. And so you don't really get a chance. Huh? You know who it is. You know who you were talking about. It's all of our friends. So that's one thing that I don't think anybody knows. Well, I think a lot of people who know Feliks know that about him. And I think you certainly got a taste of that in the documentary that Sue captured. that of Felix, but that's something that's really understated. He is a really amazing human being.
I think that comes across for both gentlemen in the film,
Yeah.
in spades, and I think that's a testament to, you know, both the subjects being who they are and Sue very carefully crafting this, you know, narrative in such a way that she's playing with the ups and downs and the tragedy and the defeat and this incredible love story at the same time, if I can call it that. Sue, what were the challenges in making a movie like this that you didn't expect, and how did you overcome them?
I think, like, you know, the initial challenge was first, can we do this? This is my first film. So like there is just a little bit of like
Extraordinary.
yeah, well, and I've been in production for 20 years, but like on the commercial side. So this is my first foray into actual storytelling and directing myself. So that was the initial like, can I do this? And just imposter syndrome happening every single day. And then there's the logistical difficulties of like, you know, Felix was in Australia. So we had a tight window to capture all the stuff that we had to capture because we couldn't just go back and forth. And then with Max and Schwan and Miki, it was so important for us to make sure that filming was done in a way that Max was comfortable with, and that and we were in their house a lot, so we're invading their space, and I'm acutely aware that we're invading their privacy and filming them like in the morning, and you know, just so we basically made sure like everything that we did was vetted and approved by them beforehand. And as we talked about, I hired a cuber who also does a lot of cinematography within the cubing world to be one of our DPs. And that was because he was already friends with Max and very familiar with Schwan and Miki. But we knew that Max would be comfortable around him. So that was a really
an insider.
Yeah, exactly. He was an insider. And actually that's I think why we got, I think, such great footage of Max just being himself was because he felt super comfortable around Chris. And just the things that he says to himself or he says to Chris, like that's who Max is. So that helped a lot. But yeah, just like kind of the logistical difficulties that I think any film probably has to go through. But I do think like in general, we were so blessed with such a great cast and crew, and we are all in the cubing universe, and it's such a, I always call it this lovely utopia, but it's just filled with like kind, decent, warm-hearted people. So it really felt like a blessed production. I'm sure there was difficulties along the way, but in general it felt like it went almost as smoothly as I could have dreamed of. So
Felix and how he comes off in the camera is just a fraction of who he is in real life. He really is an amazing person. And you don't say that very often. I don't say that very often. He's an amazing human being. He should represent our world as the ideal human being, in my opinion. But we use him constantly as a role model for Max, and Max is more than happy to follow along with any suggestions we have because Felix does it, he does it. But the other thing that I wanted to make sure that I know me and Miki, we talk about this all the time, and that, you know, as soon as Max was diagnosed with autism, we thought that, you know, we were going to always, we had a lot to teach him. But the truth is, if we sit there and put what we learned and what he's learned up against each other, Max really has taught us so much more than we thought we were going to teach him. I mean, he's changed our lives so much more than we possibly thought that we were going to teach him. And it's just, you know, we're just unbelievably grateful. Yeah. We really are. And just wanted to make sure that we said that.
Yes.
I was a producer. One of my first films was called Billy the Kid, and it was about a young teenager who falls in love in a small town in Maine. And throughout the film, we were acutely aware that Billy had this something special, this quality of being completely unguarded and vulnerable in a way that was different and challenging for his classmates in his high school. And by the end of the film, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. We made this entire movie. We hadn't a thought about it, but you know how on the end of documentaries, you put titles, where everybody is, what happened. And so at the end of the film, we gave him his title, that he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, blah, 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 blah. And even though we won the South by Southwest Film Festival for this documentary feature, which was my film also, my first film, the audience said in the Q&A, we've gone through this entire movie learning about this character, understanding this character, loving this character, watching him go through his ups and downs. Why do you then label him at the end of the film with Asperger's syndrome? We don't care. And I just thought that was such a beautiful lesson to learn as storytellers. In the real world, we shouldn't care how different anybody is, where they are on the spectrum. Everybody's a unique individual, whether you're autistic or not. And I think that every person needs to be taken as the individual that they are and received that way. And I think it's a beautiful story that you're telling through your own learning with Max, because he is an extraordinary individual. And I think that it's interesting. I was going to say Max has extraordinary taste because he picks Feliks as his hero and his champion to model after. And I think that says a lot for both of them, because Feliks has so much to teach our world and our culture about love and friendship, and how being a champion and being a man can coexist with vulnerability and friendship and love. So I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful story. And thank you for sharing that. Feliks, what do you say about all this adulation?
Yeah, I'd be lying. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't desensitized just a little bit.
But do you feel like your
sorry.
parents have shown you? Do you think your parents have shown you any different kind of a role model than most people receive, or how do you explain your sensitivity and?
I have no, I have no idea. I don't want to give my parents too much credit, but no, I'm sure they're both nice people and good role models for me as well. But I'm struggling to think if I had any strong role models or people I look up to or model myself off, but not particularly. I think, again, probably just Schwan's point of, it's better just to be a nice person. But no, the response from, all sorts of people and online and everything is, it's been super, super lovely. And I think, just so many people are grateful to Sue for bringing this and showing this to the world. I think, she did it perfectly.
Sue, was it challenging not to have a single villain in the movie? I mean, there were no.
I mean, when I was pitched this idea to other people, like producers and everyone was like, "Who's the villain?" And I'm like, "There isn't one, because it's a documentary. I have to document real life, and in this world, there isn't one." So, yeah, I mean, creating a narrative that was centered on two protagonists with no antagonist, it was sort of mind-boggling. Like, how is that going to work? How is the audience, who are they going to root for, and what are they going to, what's the tension point? And I remember telling someone in the very beginning of this, I said, if we've done our jobs right, when we're at Worlds, the audience isn't going to know who they want to win more, because they're going to want both of them to win. They're going to love both these characters, and they're going to root for both of them. And that's an internal tension that's interesting and hasn't been done. Absolutely. You don't even know who you're rooting for, because you love everyone. Like you love your two heroes. So
I think the most exquisite thing that you've done is that the audience feels everybody's heartbreak. They feel everybody's heartbreak. They feel everybody's win, and know that it's not a win for the other character. So, I mean, and I think it's Einstein that said genius is being able to hold two conflicting ideas in the same space. And I think that's what you've done exquisitely. My hat's off to you and your entire team. It's an amazing film. I desperately want everybody to see this film. And I wish you the best on the award circuit. I think it's a gem of a movie, and I hope it really makes an impact.
Thank you so much, Chiemi. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for being part of this. It's an amazing film. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.